Chapter 23. The Revelation of the Scarlet Letter. The eloquent voice on which the souls of the listening audience had been borne aloft, as on the swelling waves of the sea, at length came to pause. There was a momentary silence, profound as what should follow the utterance of oracles. Then ensued a murmuring and half-hushed tumult, as if the auditors, released from the high spell that had transported them into the region of another's mind, were returning into themselves, with all their awe and wonder still heavy on them. In a moment more, the crowd began to gush forth from the doors of the church. Now that there was an end. They needed other breath, more fit to support the gross and earthly life into which they relapsed than that atmosphere which the preacher had converted into wars of flame, and had burdened with the rich fragrance of this stout. In the open air the rapture broke into speech, the street and the marketplace absolutely from side to side, with applauses of the minister. His hearers could not rest until they had told one another what each knew better than he could tell or hear. According to their unerring testimony, never had man spoken in so wise, so high and so holy a spirit, as he that spake this day, nor had inspiration ever breathed throughout mortal lips more evidently than I did throughout his. Its influence could be seen, as it were, descending upon him, and possessing him, and continually lifting him out of the grand discursion that lay before him, and filling him with ideas that must have been as marvellous to himself as to his audience. His subject, it appeared, had been the relation between the dairy and the communities of mankind, with a special reference to the New England which they were here planting in the wilderness. And as he drew towards the close, a spirit as of prophecy had come upon him, constraining him to its purpose as merely as the old prophets of Israel were constrained, only with this difference, that whereas the Jewish seers had denounced his judgments and rained on their country, it was his mission to fulfill a high and glorious destiny for the newly gathered people of the Lord. But throughout it all, and throughout the whole discourse, there had been a certain sad undertone of pathos, which could not be interpreted otherwise than as the natural regret of one soon to pass away. Yes, their minister, one they so loved, and who so loved them all that he could not depart heavenward without a sign. At the forbearing of untimely death upon him, and would soon leave them in their tears. This idea of this transitory stay on earth gave the last emphasis to the effect which the preacher had produced. It was as if an angel, in his passage to the skies, had shaken his bright wings over the people for an instant, at once a shadow and a splendor, and had shielded down a shower of golden throws upon them. Thus there had come to Reverend Mr. Dinsdale, as to most men in their various spheres, though seldom recognized until they see it afar behind them, an epoch of life more brilliant and full of charm than any previous one, or than any which could hereafter be. He had stood at this moment on the very perilous eminence of superiority, to which the gift of intellect, rich lore, prevailing eloquence, and reputation of wittiest sincerity, could excite a clergyman in New England's earliest days, when the professional character was of itself a lofty pedestal. Such was the position which the minister occupied, as he bowed his head forward on the cushion of the pulpit at the close of his election sermon. Meanwhile, Hester Prynne was standing beside the scaffold of the pillory, with the scarlet letter still burning on her breast. Now was heard again the clangor of the music and the measured tone of the military score. issuing from the church door. The procession was to be marshalled thence to the town hall, where a solemn banquet would complete the ceremonies of the day. Once more, therefore, the train of venerable and majestic fathers was seen moving through a broad pathway of the people, who drew back reverently on either side, as the governor and magistrates, the old and wise men, the holy minister, and all that were eminent and renowned, advanced into the midst of them. When they were fairly in the market-place, their presence was greeted by a shout. This, though doubtless it might acquire additional force and volume from the childlike loyalty which the age awarded to its rulers, was felt to be an irrepressible outburst of the enthusiasm kindling the auditors by that high strain of eloquence which was yet reverberating in their ears. Each felt the impulse in himself, and in the same breath caught it from his neighbour. Within the church it had hardly been kept down; beneath the sky it filled upward to the zenith. There were human beings enough, and enough of highly wrought on symphonious feeling, to produce that more impressive sound than the organ tones of the blast, or the thunder, or the roar of the sea, even that meanly swell of many voices, blending into one great voice by the universal impulse which makes likewise one vast heart out of the many. Never from the soil of New England had gone up such a shout. Never on New England soil had stood the man so honoured by his mortal brethren as the preacher. How fared it with him then? Were there not the brilliant particulars of halo in the air above his head? So ethereal by spirit as he was, yet so obtuse by worshipping and murders, did his footsteps in the procession really tread upon the dust of earth? As the ranks of military men and civil fathers moved onward, all eyes were turned towards the point where the minister was seen to approach among them. The shout died into the murmur, as one portion of the crowd after another obtained a glimpse of him. How feeble and pale he looked in all this throng! The energy, or say rather the inspiration which had held him up, until he shall have delivered the sacred message that brought its own strength along with it from heaven, was withdrawn now that it had so faithfully performed its office. The glow, which they had just before beheld burning on his cheek, was extinguished like a flame that sinks down hopeless among the late decaying members. It seemed hardly the face of man alive, with such a death-like hue; it was hardly man with life in him, that, though thread on his path, so neverthelessly, yet thread and did not fall. One of his clerical brethren, it was the venerable John Wilson, observing the state in which Mr. Jensen was left by the returning wave of the infinite insensibility, stepped forward hastily to offer his support. The minister tremulously but decidedly repelled the old man's arm. He still looked onward, if that movement could be so described, which rather resembled the wavering effort of an infant, with its mother's arm in view, outstretched to tempt him forward. And now, almost imperceptible as were the later steps on his progress, he had gone opposite the well-remembered and weather-darkened scaffold, where long since, with all that greedy lapse of time between, Hester Prynne had encountered the worst ignominious stare. There stood Hester holding little Pearl by the hand, and there was the scarlet letter on her breast. The minister here made a pause, although the music still played the stately and rejoicing march to which the procession moved. It summoned him onward to the festival, but here he made a pause. Bellingham, for the last few moments, had kept an anxious eye upon him. He now left his own place in the procession, and advanced to give assistance judging from Mr. Dean's aspect that he must otherwise inevitably fall, but there was something in the latter's expression that warned back the magistrate, although a man not really obeying the vague intimation that passed from one spirit to another. The crowd meanwhile looked on with awe and wonder. This early Venus was, in their view, only another phase of the minister's celestial strength, nor would it have seemed a miracle to hide to be wrought for one so holy. Had he ascended before their eyes, what seemed dimmer and brighter, and fading at last into the light of heaven? He turned towards the scaffold and stretched forth his arms. "Hester," said he, "come hither. Come, my little pair." It was a ghastly look with which he regarded them, but there was something at once tender and strangely triumphant in it. The child, with the bird-like emotion which was one of her characteristics, flew to him and clasped her arms about his knees. Hester Prynne, slowly as if impelled by an inevitable fate, and against her strongest will, likewise drew near, but paused before she reached him. At this instant old Roger Shylock thrust himself through the crowd. Or perhaps so dark, disturbed, and evil was his look, he rose up out of some nether region, to snatch back his victim from what he sought to do. Be that as it might, the old man rushed forward and caught the minister by the arm. "Madman, hold! What is your purpose?" whispered he. "Wave back that woman! Cast off this child! All shall be well. Do not beckon your pain and perish in dishonour. I can yet save you. Will you rank infamy in your sacred profession?" "Hot-tempered, methinks thou art too late," answered the minister, encountering his eye, fearfully but firmly. "Thy power is not what it was. With God's help, I shall escape thee now." He again extended his hand to the woman of the scarlet letter. "Hester Prynne," cried he, with a piercing earnestness, "in the name of Him, so terrible and so merciful, who gives me grace, at this last moment, to do what, for my own heavy sin and merciful agony, I withheld myself from doing 7 years ago, come hither now, and twin thy strength about me. Thy strength, Hester, but let it be guided by the guilt which God hath granted me. This wretched and wronged old man is observing it with all his might, with all his own might and defence. Come, Hester, come, support me up yonder scaffold." The crowd was in a tumult. The men of rank and dignity who stood more immediately around the clergyman were so taken by surprise and so perplexed as to the purport of what they saw, unable to receive the explanation which most really presented itself, or to imagine any another, that they remained silent in activity spectator of the judgment which Providence seemed about to work. They beheld the minister leaning on Hester's shoulder and supported by her arm around him, approach the scaffold and ascend its steps, while still the little hand of the sea-born child was clasped in his. All Roger Shelley's work followed as one intimately connected with the drama of guilt and sorrow in which they had all been actors, and well entitled therefore to be present at its closing scene. "Hast thou sought the world over?" said he, looking narrowly at the clergyman. "There was no one place so sacred, no high place nor lowly place, where the clothes have escaped me, save on this very scaffold. Thanks be to him who hath led me hither," answered the minister. Yet he trembled and turned on Hester with an expression of doubt and anxiety in his eyes. Not the less eventually betrayed that there was a feeble smile upon his lips. "Is not this better," murmured he, "than what he dreamed of in the forest?" I know not," she hurriedly replied. "Better? Yea, so we may both die, and little Pearl die with us. For thee and Pearl be it as a God shall order," said the minister, "and God is merciful. Let me let me now do the will which he had made plain before my sight. For Hester, I am dying man, so let me make haste to take my shame upon me." partly supported by his surprising holding one hand of little purse. The Reverend Mr. Linden turned to dignified unbearable rulers, to the holy ministers, who were his branded, to the people whose great heart was surely appealed, yet overflowing with tearful sympathy, as knowing that some deep life matter, which if full of sin, was full of against repentance likewise, was now to be laid open to them. The sun but little past its meridian, shone down upon the clergyman and gave a distinctness to his figure, as he stood out from all the earth to pour in his plea of guilty at the bar of eternal justice. People of New England, cried he, with a voice that rose over them, high, solemn, and majestic, yet held with a tremor through it, in some sense stricken strongly upon up of a soulless depth of remorse and woe. Ye that have loved me, ye that have deemed me holy, behold me here, the one sinner of the world. At last, I stand upon this spot where, 7 years since, I should have stood here with this woman, whose arm more than the little strength wherewith I have crept high the war sustains me at this dreadful moment from grovelling down upon my face. Lo, the scarlet letter which Hester wears, ye have all sheltered under it, wherever her would had been, wherever so miserably burdened she may have hoped to find repose, it had cast a luring gleam of awaiting horrible repugnance round about her, but there stood one in the midst of you, as was born of sin and infamy ye have no children. It seemed at this point as if the minister must leave the remainder of his secret undisclosed, but he fought back the bodily weakness, and still more the faintness of heart, that was striving for the mastery with him. He threw off all assistance, and stepped passionately forward a piece before the woman and the child. It was on him, he continued with a kind of firmness, so determined was he to speak out the word. God's eyes beheld it, the angels were for ever painting at it. The devil knew it well, and threatened it continually with the touch of his burning finger. But he held it cunningly for men, and walked among you with the men of a spirit, mournful because of pure sinful world, and sad because he missed his heavenly kindred. Now at the death hour he stands up before you. He bids you look again at Hester's scarlet letter. He tells you that with all its mysterious horror, it is but the shadow of what he bears on his own breast, and that even this unread stigma is no more than the tide of what has stirred his inmost heart. Standing any here that question God's judgment on a sinner, behold a dreadful witness of it. With a convulsive motion he tore away the ministerial band from before his breast. It was revealed, but it were irreverent to describe the revelation. For an instant the gaze of the horror-stricken multitude was concentrated on the ghastly miracle, while the minister stood with a flush of tremble in his face, as one who, in the crisis of ignorance faith, had won a victory. Then down they sank upon the scaffold. Hester proudly raised him, and supported his head against her bosom. Old Roger Chillingworth kneeled down beside him, with a blank, dull countenance out of which the life seemed to have departed. "Thou hast escaped me," he repeated more than once, "thou hast escaped me." "May God forgive thee," said the minister, "thou hast deeply sinned." He withdrew his eyes from the old man, and fixed then on the woman and the child. "My little bird," said he feebly, and there was a sweet and gentle smile over his face, as of a spirit sinking into deep repose. Nay, now that the burden was removed, it seemed almost as if he would be sportive with the child. "Dear little bird, wilt thou kiss me now? The wilderness is not yonder, in the forest, but now thou wilt." Pearl kissed his lips. A spell was broken. The great scene of grief, in which the wild infant bore a part, had developed all her sympathies, and as her tears fell upon her father's cheek, they were the pledge that she would grow up any human joy in sorrow, not for ever to battle with the world, but be a woman yet. Towards his mother too, first errand as a messenger of English was all fulfilled. "Hester," said the clergyman, "farewell. Shall we not meet again? whispered she, bending her face down close to his. Shall we not spend our immortal lives together? Certainly, certainly, we have ransomed one another with all this woe. To look as far into eternity with those bright dying eyes. Then tell me what this is. Hush, Hester, hush, said he with tremulous solemnity. The law we broke, the sin here so awful rebellion, let see alone be in thy thoughts. I fear, I may be that when we forgot our God, when we violate our reverence each for the other soul, it was then for vain to hope that we could meet hereafter in an everlasting and pure union. God knows, and He is merciful. He hath provided His mercy, most of all in my afflictions, by giving me this burning torture to bear upon my breast, by sending yonder dark and terrible old man, to keep the turtle always at red head, by bringing me hither to die his band death of triumphant ignominy before the people. Had either of these agonies been waiting, I had been lost forever. Praised be his name, his will be done. Farewell. That final word came forth with the minister's spurring breath. The multitude, silent till then, broke out in strange, deep voice of awaiting wonder, which could not as yet find utterance save in this murmur that rolled so heavily after the departed spirit.